Did you know that heart disease is the number one cause of death worldwide, but 80% of it is preventable? In this episode, we're going to share a powerful foundation for keeping our heart pumping strong. You don't want to miss it right after this. Welcome, everybody. I'm Scott Patton, your host, and joining us as usual is Martin Patella, who's hard at work pumping his heart. Before I forget, afterwards, join us uncensored on Telegram. We still can't say some things that they don't like, but t.me/life&co, and we'll answer all of your questions. And that's in a half an hour. So welcome, Martin. How are you doing today?
Good. You know, the heart beats once per second, about 100,000 times a day.
Wow.
And if you're running, it's twice that. It's about, what is it, a few billion in your lifetime?
I read, or I was listening to somebody once who said you have a finite number of heartbeats. and the question is whether you do stuff to make that number go down or go up.
You know, there's this real dichotomy in it, because if you did have finite number of heartbeats, getting your heart rate up by exercising would necessarily shorten your life.
Yes.
On the other hand, when you're fit, your resting heart rate goes down, thereby extending your life. So I think interval training is probably the best method.
Yeah.
And if, in case you wondered, interval means push hard for a short amount of time, something like 30 seconds to 1 minute, and then breathe it out for 1 to 2 minutes, and again, like maybe 12 times. And by the time you're done with your 12 reps, you're good. You're building muscle, you're conditioning your heart, and
The
it
lungs.
only takes 10, 12 minutes a day, but it needs to be at full engagement.
And if you look at the animals that are around us, like cats and dogs, they lay around all day and then they run out in the yard and they get their exercise and then they lay around all day.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Short stretches of full engagement of high stress, fight or flight, interrupted by very long restful periods of being in the parasympathetic rest, repair, digest mode.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a list of 4 common threats to heart health. I just want to bring them up quickly, and then we want to talk about some actionable tips for a healthier heart. So number 1, high blood pressure, hypertension. Number 2, high cholesterol, poor diet. Number 3, sedentary lifestyle, lack of exercise, which we just talked about. Number 4, stress, smoking, and poor sleep.
Yeah. So let's start from the back. Sleep. Sleep is the ultimate repair. Rest and repair. That's the parasympathetic mode. That's when your body is undoing the effects of the maximum energy expenditure. That's when it's undoing the effects of stress. So if you don't sleep, if you arrive at your sleep hour still in sympathetic fight or flight, anxiety-riddled mode, you're not going to sleep well. You're not going to repair. This is imperative. Otherwise, you're shortening your life. No question there.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And so, parasympathetic, the biggest driver of parasympathetic mode is magnesium in the mineral kingdom and green, chlorophyll, in the plant kingdom. And they meet together because chlorophyll is identical to hemoglobin, except it has magnesium at the center instead of iron, which we humans have in our blood. So it's the best nutrition you can find. Those would be barley grass, wheatgrass, alfalfa, chlorella, spirulina, blue-green algae, and in the food realm, lettuce. Lettuce, celery, cucumber, all the green stuff. Arugula, endives, rocket, also known as, forget the name of it. I think rocket.
And another way that you can get magnesium is you can absorb it. So get the magnesium, put it in a tub, and
Soak.
nice warm tub for half an hour. That's what I did last night. And boy, I feel very relaxed and good and not achy today.
Yeah, you are looking definitely like good amount of water retention and
Yeah, not too
relaxed.
much water retention,
Just enough.
just enough. So and then you had already we talked a little bit earlier about the sedentary lifestyle. And
yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, we humans are designed for work under load. We're supposed to chop wood and carry water. No question about that. We used to hunt for our food. We used to walk a long distance to the spring or well or creek to bring water to the cave, or all of that.
yeah, and so think about it. Are you taking an elevator up 3 flights when you could walk up 3 flights? Are you parking beside the door to the store instead of at the other end of the parking lot and give yourself a little bit more distance to walk?
Yeah. It should be about 30 minutes a day walking, solid walking. By the way, that's the surest way to deal with constipation. If you have that, try 30 minutes of walking a day and see if that resolves the problem.
Right. Good point. And then high cholesterol and poor diet.
Right. So that, of course, one is the driver of the other. Right. Cholesterol, unlike the myth that is promoted in the mainstream, that eating cholesterol-rich foods leads to cholesterol in your arteries, that's total nonsense. Your liver makes cholesterol all the time, and it makes it in response to starches that are dissolved into glucose that is converted into triglyceride, and cholesterol is a response to the high inflammatory, high temperature burning of food converted into energy. So it is actually the starches, grains, and tubers. To name them: wheat, rye, barley, corn, potato, rice, sweet potato. I think I'm at the end of it. If you want specific names, that would be ketchup and French fries.
Right.
With pizza and calzone. That is the diet that gives you the most cholesterol response for your bloodstream. And the worry about cholesterol came from, you will dislodge a piece of cholesterol, a blob of this lining that's now coating the inside of the tube. You see, your arteries are supposed to be as smooth as glass, as a mirror. And if they're not, that happens because of the damage of the inflammatory stuff circulating, because that lodges itself into the walls and nicks and etches them. And these nicks and cuts are being repaired by cholesterol. And the cholesterol is now lining the inside tube.
If you had a scar on your foot or on your hand, or it's going to be a little bit of a bump, right?
Right, but it's a scar inward, right? Like it's sort of like stalactite coming off of a ceiling of a cave, and it's just restricting flow within the otherwise smooth tubing. And that is the narrowing of the arteries. Clogging, right?
Clogging.
And that is really in reaction to inflammatory foods. And that's the metabolic illness that will be coming to us in the form of high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, those are all the same thing. So when you said poor nutrition, the poor nutrition is the nutrition that's subsidized by the government. And the way they subsidize it, they subsidize long-term energy storage, which is wheat, corn, soy, rice. Those are the most subsidized foods and the cheapest things you can buy in the store. And they are the worst. I certainly hope that we will have this revolution that has been promised to come, that we will
Right.
undo the subsidies for foods that should not be subsidized. I want to see subsidies on broccoli and cucumber, not on high fructose corn syrup, ketchup, and breakfast cereal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're spending our tax dollars on helping the growth of certain foods that are not helpful.
Which then make us sick, and we spend a fortune trying to undo the damage. I mean, think the stupidity of it. We're wasting money in healthcare that we have created, the problem that we created by wasting money in agriculture.
Right. It's a big
Wow.
waste.
Yeah, it's one big. Anyway, all right.
So-
That's politics. I should leave that alone, other than to tell you that you must eat things not because they're cheap, but because they're right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's the old pay me now or pay me later. And if you're going to be paying later, it's not just the money and the cost of it. It's going to be, in your energy, you're going to be paying with it with your energy and with your health. And that's
Right. So
That's right.
here we have we have this damage. We have this cholesterol coating within throughout. It could be a couple pounds of cholesterol, because it was said that the biggest organ in your body is your skin. That's not true. The biggest organ in your body is actually the epithelium that is making up all the circulatory system, your arteries and your veins. That
Oh.
is bigger than your skin.
Wow.
Thousands of miles off. I think it's the distance of at least once around the earth inside each one of us.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about some actionable tips for healthier hearts. One you already mentioned was eat for your heart. The leafy greens. Get rid of the
Glycemic index. Yeah. Glycemic index, folks. The highest glycemic index is glucose itself. And then glucose is made straight out of starch. So anything starch. The lower stuff is, we have high carbohydrate veggies like rice or potato, medium like carrot and parsnip, and low like green onion and lettuce. And then we have fats and proteins. Interestingly, fats can not be converted into glucose, but can be used for energy. Proteins, on the other hand, can be converted into glucose. So when you're digesting proteins, you're actually digesting some into glucose. In fact, if you're in a real energy deficit, you will start wasting your muscles. Your body tissues will be converting into energy.
right. That's what we call starvation, right?
Yep.
So you really need to look at your heart, and at your food.
Yeah.
And we've started reading ingredients, but we haven't learned what good ingredients are versus bad ingredients. So one would be, if you read a whole bunch of letters and they don't make any sense, it's probably a bad ingredient.
Right.
And then and seed oil is in everything that's processed.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Now you hit on that note, the 5 things you never touch: refined flour, refined sugar, refined salt, refined plant seed oils, and dairy that has been homogenized and pasteurized.
Right.
Don't. That's the unhealth food.
Yeah. And don't be fooled by the marketing, right? Organic salad dressing. Great. So it's organic canola oil.
Yeah.
Organic.
Yeah. Organic cookie made with wheat and strawberry jam, both grown organically.
Yeah.
metabolic suicide organically.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we keep thinking that we're doing the right thing because we don't dig deep enough. And that's really a condemnation of our system, right? Like, it's, if we know it, we're pretty sure that the food manufacturers know it, and we're pretty sure that the head of the health authorities knows it. And if they don't know it, they should know it. I mean, I'm sure that they get lots of letters telling them that they should know it. And so from the top down, it should be, let's make it.
I don't know. Sinclair Lewis wrote that it's really hard to convince a man of something, knowing which would prevent him from making a living or getting his salary.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't want to know.
They don't want.
If
right.
you start telling them this, it's going to go la 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 la.
You just reminded me. I was watching a video, and these people went to a protest.
All right.
And so these people are all like around protesting, and someone said, "Well, I want to talk to you about these issues." And the guy just did that, put his fingers in here, and he just started blah, blah, blah. Like he was not going to listen to anything that was different than what he believed at that point.
My mind is made up. Do not bother me with your facts.
I think, Martin, that we need to start a letter writing campaign.
To whom?
To whoever's in charge of the health in the country that you're in, and your congressman and all the rest of it. Well, not us. We need to organize, the thousands and hundreds of thousands of listeners and put it up. That's going to be my goal for 2025.
Okay, we need to vote, and we need to ask our representatives how they feel about health. Well, let's just see. As of time of this recording, it still is pending whether Kennedy gets the.
Actually, the news this morning is he got in.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. Okay, so if he's in, one of his platforms was to deal with metabolic health, and one of his team members were going to be Kaylee and Casey Means, two, one medical, one business, brother and sister. And they I've listened to them. I saw them on Rogan. I saw them on Tucker Carlson. They say the message very clearly. They say the same message I've been saying for 20 years, which is America is sick with a metabolic illness, and the metabolic illness is driven by the food choices, and our food choices are driven by government policy, and that is what I hope they will change.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
All right. We're getting close to our time, and we really want to talk about an excellent product. But before we do, we've talked about things that you can do, but I think what's really important is doing things that you can maintain for the long term, right? So that may mean making small changes that you can become consistent in and turn them into new habits, right? So don't feel like I got to drop 50 pounds today. Start eating better and making the changes so that you drop that weight over the year, and then you'll keep it off. Whereas if you do the yo-yo dieting, it's not going to happen. And we really want to look at micro changes, like walking an extra 10 minutes a day, or, saying I'm not going to, I'm taking, like, you also want to set yourself up for success. Like, look at your cupboard. There's refined salt, there's refined sugar. Like, throw it out, right? And then go to the store with your list and say, okay, what am I going to eat instead of this, right? Because you can't just stop, eating. You have to do something different. And then look at your calendar and say, okay, like, what can I do so that I have time to create my own food? Because really, that's what you have to do. 90% of the food in the store is very seductive, and to think that you can reduce the influence of multi-billion-dollar companies that spend millions and millions of dollars figuring out how to seduce you to eat their foods is kind of ridiculous, right? But if you stay to the outside and you say, okay, I'm going to buy organic carrots and organic celery, and I'm going to make a chicken noodle soup with it or something like that, then, maybe on Sunday on your day off, you just say, for 4 hours every week, I'm going to make all these meals, put them in the freezer and take them out throughout the week. Like, you have to really think about how you have to restructure your life, right? Because the way you're living it for 90% of the population is going to give you the result that 90% of the population has, which is heart attacks. So if you don't want to be like everybody else, then you can't do what everybody else is doing. And then also look at, okay, if I go out with my friends, what am I going to do? Am I going to drink water? Am I going to drink beer? Am I going to drink wine? Am I going to order the Big Mac, or am I not going to go to those places and I'm going to go someplace that has salads that I can eat, or fish that I can eat, or beef that I can eat? And, you just but you need to do some planning on it, as opposed to just reacting and saying, okay, where are we going? And just, yay, party, and blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm hooped.
Right. All that.
All right. So we have like 5 minutes, really, Martin.
Let's talk about solutions.
Right. And the one I want to talk about is the Heart Studies formula.
Right. Yeah, that's an awesome product. It does not stand alone. It's in addition to good nutrition. So you want to take one of the decent blends that we already make, like XLF50, Advancium, Zoetine, or whatever, any one of the good ones. But the Heart formula, it's named Heart Studies formula because it was built based on the current studies when it was being designed. And I remember when Javari was designing it, he liked to print things. He liked to work on paper or from paper. And he printed it, and it was a stack, 3 stacks about that. Like it was something like 4 or 5 reams of paper, a lot of stuff. He printed the studies, read it all, put it all in his head, and he was a bit of a genius in mixing, designing things, and put it together. And it was based on a typical American eating a diet somewhat too rich in carbohydrates, but overcoming that sort of situation. And it works on
and most of us do eat way too much carbohydrates.
Yeah, it's typical that we eat more than we should. Anyway, what he worked on is, one, the clogging of the arteries. We talked about that quite a bit. It's the cholesterol. This thing will actually reliquefy the cholesterol. So do not be going for a blood test right after you start this, because you're going to be off the chart high. And you should take some fiber with it, like apple fiber, or at minimum some oatmeal, to scrub out the free cholesterol. Anyway, it will do that. It will move the cholesterol out. And second thing, it will undo the calcification, the hardening of the arteries. And then it will also work on reducing the inflammation. So it's loaded with nutrients. I mean, the list is fairly long, but functionally, well, I'll tell you a story. A fellow called us, had an ultrasound of his carotid artery. That's the big ones that are feeding your brain. There's a pair of them here in the neck. Anyway, carotid artery occluded by 80%, only 20% left for the blood. He bought the 6-pack, 6 bottles of Heart formula, 2 bottles of apple fiber, and consumed that in space of 8 weeks. This is known as the fast burn. And you ramp up, and you start from small, and you go to 6 teaspoons a day, 2 morning, 2 midday, 2 evening, teaspoons of this. And you need to take it about an hour before meals. You need to take it on an empty stomach so that the amino acids within it are actually doing the job that they need to be doing. Anyway, so 8 weeks later, he went for a recheck. Now his carotid arteries were 80% free, 20% occluded, which actually is remarkably improved, right? Like no longer a health threat, just a concern. The other way you can use this product, yeah, it is awesome. The other way you can use this product is maintenance mode. You will take 2 teaspoons a day, once a day, and that's enough to do all the metabolic stuff that needs to be done in your body to clear the accumulating cholesterol. It will stop accumulating, and to clear all the inflammatory issues that you may have. You know how when you hit starch, goes into glucose, goes into triglyceride with the help of insulin, converting into fat. I'm skipping a few steps, but the general trajectory is from starch to fat, belly fat for most of us, right. Shoulder fat for some of us. Yeah, so that will stop when you start taking the hard formula on maintenance all the time, and you can.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left. Next week, we're going to continue talking about your heart health, because it's Heart Month, and we're going to be looking at some of the top natural healing remedies that
there's a lot more one can do, but this is the bedrock on which you can build solid long-term health.
Right. And we live in a world that's full of negative news, and our good news, dare I say gospel, is you can change things. Like, your body can get healthier. And if you're in a lot of pain or your arteries are clogged, these are things that you can do naturally. You don't need to be cut open and have people scrape stuff and put stents in and all the rest of it. There is a time when you have to do that, but hopefully if you're watching us, you're at a time where you don't have to do that. Yeah. And so, reverse those things that are going to be causing the problems, because none of this is stuck in.
Next week, maybe, Scott, we should talk about the surgical options, the stents and the bypasses.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Make note. Let's unpack it. Let's explain why that is, and how a prevention versus heroic measures is what we need to work with.
Yeah, like, really, Martin, the choice is, you can stop. You can say, I have a bunch of habits I need to change. You can get help, and you can change those habits, whether it's what you're putting into your food, what you're breathing in, and all the rest of it. Or you can go onto the knife, and they can cut you from, top to bottom,
stem to stern,
rip you open and do all of that. And then you're going to be like in the hospital for a couple months recuperating, right? And then never be able to work or do anything at the level that you did before, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So thank you for joining us, everybody. We're going to be over at t.me/life&co. Link is in the comments, probably in the description as well. And we'll see you next week. But and happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Bring me up.